Welcome to the Day in History for June 8th. Today, we are going to combine two great ideas. Well, the big idea, let's just go right to the big idea, because today is the first official missile mail that lands. Now, let's combine two great ideas, rockets and a mail system. Now, the big idea for today is that two great ideas put together don't always work. It didn't work very well. But we're going to talk about it. We're in Jacksonville, Florida. We're going to talk about rockets and mail, and the topic is communication, or the category. I'll let you write this down. Okay, here we go. We are in Jacksonville, Florida. This is where the mail rocket actually landed. So, okay. Now, we're going to do two super quick history lessons, one on mail and one on rockets, and then we'll combine them and see what happens. So, the first thing we got to talk about is mail. Now, letters have existed in some form since the first writing systems were developed. Because once you could write something down, you could then transport it somewhere else. And some of the first examples go all the way back to ancient Mesopotamia and the cuneiform writing. We actually did some of this the last week of school. Remember that? Now, these tablets could be made in clay and then moved and taken somewhere else. Hence, you kind of had the first mail system. It wasn't official. There wasn't like an official like a mail person, but people would travel with these messages. Now, a little bit later, the ancient Egyptians did that as well with their writing system, the hieroglyphics. Throughout ancient history, whether it's the Indus Valley, ancient China, other places, they all had similar methods to transport messages. Now, the ancient Chinese, before they developed paper, used these pieces of wood rolled up to send messages as well. So they had their mail system. Now, we're going to fast forward a bit. We're going to go all the way up to the 1650s with a gentleman in France named Jean-Jacques Renaud de Villiers. Now, this guy was given the job to make a more formal system. And this is actually where the first mailboxes start to show up. This is actually one of, I think, the original mailboxes they made, where you could go around and you would pay a certain amount of money and you'd get like a note, and then you could put it on a piece of paper and put it in this mailbox and it would be delivered. Pretty cool, all the way back to 1650. Let's fast forward a little bit to 1837, where we get the actual first self-stick stamp. So in England, Rowland Hill developed a stamp that you could glue to a piece of paper. Pretty cool, right? I always wanted to know about the first stamp. I'll bet you that first stamp's worth a lot of money. You know, there's a lot of people that have a hobby of collecting stamps. It's pretty huge. You could do that for some follow-up research. Now, let's move actually back in time to 1775. I've got my slides mixed up. But we're going to talk about Benjamin Franklin and the Postmaster General. This is really where the United States Post Office got its first start. And we've done Day in History on the Post Office. Remember that video we watched with the crazy machines that did all that work? Well, it all started with Benjamin Franklin and some of our other founding fathers, because they understood that you needed to be able to communicate with the people around you. And back throughout most of history, we didn't have phones, telegraphs, video chat, email, none of that stuff. We had letters, and that's it. You couldn't text in the year 1500. You had to write something down, roll it up, seal it so somebody didn't pretend that they wrote it, and then send somebody off on a fast horse or a runner. Pretty crazy, right? Hasn't been that long since we had to hand deliver every message. Okay, let's switch gears. Let's switch to rockets. Okay, let's talk about we're talking thousands of years ago, ancient Greek. And they figured out something called the Hero engine. And it's considered one of the first rockets, because what they did is they took water and they put it inside a steel ball. And it had these two little L-shaped things that came out. And when you heated it up, it boiled the water, which created steam, and it made this ball spin around. Okay? So this is one of the first examples of a rocket. Now, doesn't seem like it's really going anywhere, right? It's not. But the basic concept of shooting gas out a nozzle to make something move is really what a rocket is. There's actually another example around this time period of like a wooden bird that had the same sort of thing on it, and they heated up water in a little container, and it like made the bird go across a string. So that's another example of a rocket. Now, the ancient Chinese are famous for their rockets and their fireworks, and it actually started out as a way to launch their fire arrows farther. And what the Chinese realized after lighting these gunpowder, which is saltpeter and some other stuff, is they realized that they could launch these without a bow, and which really created the first rockets and fireworks. They had a lot of contraptions to shoot these rockets off at their targets. Now, there's an interesting story I came across. Apparently 2,000 years ago, and this is one of those legends, there was a notable in China named, what was his name? Wan Hu, who lit 47 rockets, or 47 little rockets under his chair and launched himself to the moon. 2,000 years ago. Guys, I'm sorry, the moon landing was not in 1969. It was 2,000 years ago with a guy sitting on a rocket chair. Probably not. But it makes a good story, right? Who knows if it actually happened? It happened 2,000 years ago. It's a legend. But I thought it was a cool story. Okay, let's fast forward, because a lot of stuff happened in between. But we're going to get up until, we're going to go about 1915, when Goddard here created his first real rocket. Now, there was some experiments in Russia beforehand, but I'm going to talk about this one because this is a pretty famous launch in 1915, or right around 1915. But this is modern rocketry, okay? This is not gunpowder on a stick shot up in the air, right? This is like actually building rockets. Now, Goddard developed this sort of rocket system that eventually took off and was developed in more complex and larger terms. Now, in World War II, we come across the V-2 rocket that the Nazis used, and this was a weapon of mass destruction that they launched just to scare people. But it was a very well-designed rocket that, if it would have been going straight up to put something into space, it would have been a great scientific achievement. Unfortunately, it was used as a weapon of terror. Now, we are going to fast forward even farther to, what, last week? Was it last week? Maybe the week before? I don't know. Yeah, maybe it was last week. But we launched the Dragon. Look how far we've come. We've come from a steel ball with boiling water spinning around to literally launching humans into space on a brand new rocket that can come down and land by itself. Absolutely amazing. Now, we have mail and we have rockets. Let's combine them and we'll have rocket mail. Seemed like a great idea, right? Now, I was reading a report or an article about rocket mail, and apparently in like the 1930s, some people believed that it was the way it was just going to be. It's inevitable, right? It's just like, why wouldn't we deliver mail by rockets? It would work so great. And so people really believed that this was the future. We look back on it today and we're like, seriously? You're going to launch mail on rockets? I mean, rockets are expensive, mail is cheap. Why don't you just put it on a truck or an airplane? I don't know. But they thought it would be a great idea. And so they launched it. And this is actually the launch. They launched rocket mail in this rocket in 1959. Not bad, right? It worked. Some of the early tests didn't work that great. There was even some ideas to use like giant artillery shells to shoot mail like how they did in World War I. I don't know. It didn't pan out. This one worked, but it was more of like a publicity stunt. It never really went anywhere. Now, this is an actual letter that was delivered. If you zoom in, which you probably can't see on this video, but if you Google it, you can find this. It actually has a postmark of June 8th, and it's the first official missile mail. So, great idea. Didn't really work that well. Sometimes things like that happen in history. But you know what? We tried. Okay, guys, day in history complete. I'll see you tomorrow.